welcome to the Founders in LA podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Cole, and this is our first live edition. Very excited to have it here. Founders in LA is an opportunity to shine the spotlight through a product lens on some of the exceptional founders we have as a part of the LA community in an unedited, one-take organic conversation. With us today via Studio Bit is Balaji Lakshmanan. Thanks so much for joining us, Balaji. Thanks for providing the technology to let us go live.
Hey, Ethan, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We'll get into our conversation with Balaji in a minute, but first, a word from our sponsors. Founders in LA is brought to you by Unita. Unita Club is the co-working space that sets itself apart. With locations in El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, and Hermosa, Unita is where creativity flourishes. Unlike traditional offices, they provide an inspiring environment where ideas can thrive and businesses can grow. With Unita, there's no hidden fees, flexible terms, options for dedicated offices, and unlimited access to conference rooms, a photo studio, this podcast studio, plus Starin 3D printers and 24/7 access at any of their locations. They're local champions who support neighborhood businesses, open their event spaces to nonprofits, and celebrate art, music, and culture. Join Unita Club and experience co-working like never before. Learn more at www.unita.club. We're also brought to you by the Product Managers Association Los Angeles, available at pma.la. They're the largest professional organization for product and designers in LA. With more than 4,000 members from over 500 companies, they host monthly meetups, organize a product leader council, and have a mentorship program where they connect working product managers with students from underrepresented groups to build a better and more diverse next gen. To learn more, please go to pma.la. Our guest this afternoon is Balaji Lakshmanan. He's the co-founder and CTO of Vast Communications. Well, thanks so much for being here, Balaji. Could you just give us a 30-second description of Vast Communications?
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. Vast Communications was founded in the last recession cycle, 2008, so to speak. We got into conference calling business. We did audio, video conferencing, and moved to web conferencing. Just before pandemic, we were competing in the same space as Zoom, WebEx platforms. Fast forward now, we are moving into creator economy with our Studio Bit product.
And I mean, it must have been quite a ride, especially throughout the pandemic. How did you find your way into this space? It certainly wasn't a place that existed as we were, kids growing up. Like, how did you find yourself into the digital communications? Was it a straight path? Did you always see it coming, or you kind of find a winding way here?
Well, that's a very good question. So looking back, I think I'm an engineer. I like solving problems, and that's always been a core part of me. When growing up, I got attracted to the computers, right, and got into that first. Even in the engineering, I'm an electrical engineer by my degree, then got into computers, right. So moving along, coming to America, I think the entrepreneurship or the startup got into me after I met with Mr. Alex Rusich, who was the founder of LiveOffice, which got later sold to Symantec, and having the opportunity to closely work with him and learn how to bootstrap, right? That's probably the most difficult form of startup, right? And that's my pathway. And it's I would certainly say it was a bumpy ride along, right? Like every other startup out there, it's just the first few years are pretty brutal, but I'm glad to say we made it through that. Mostly through our technical efficiencies and automation and whatever we brought to the table on the product side.
So when you were first building, you said you're bootstrapping, so you kind of, younger guys trying to break into the technology, break it into the industry. How did you go about trying to find those first customers? Once you had an idea, once you knew what you were going to build, how did you go about trying to convince that first group of people or first group of companies to, give you money for your services?
Great question. I started in telephony when I joined Sprint when I came to America first. I was at the Sprint Advanced Technology Labs out there in Kansas. So part of what made me start this is all the complexity that went with the technology as telecommunications company we were operating at the time. So one of the key things we narrowed down was how can we make this simple to small business owner who's always wearing multiple hats, and giving them a manual of 400 pages is definitely not helping them. I think we followed that thread along the way, and that's where we found our breakthrough. We took something that was telephony oriented. The conferences were managed very clumsily in a keyboard and *5, *1 type of thing, and brought it all to an online simple web management page, right? The product itself was enabling you to manage your call without expensive third party, right? And that's how we made progress in this whole arena, breaking into the early customer base, right? And one of the other things we felt was to either go top down or bottom up. In this case, we started with let's have a lot of small guys. So the foundation is pretty strong. It's not like we are afraid of one customer leaving if you go from enterprise level, right? So that's also the reason why we still support tens of thousands of communities or small businesses across all walks of life, even today.
That's interesting. So the strategy was, multiple streams, so that as you're an early stage startup, you're trying to find your way. You don't find yourself, I don't want to say beholden, but you don't find yourself too closely tied to one single customer, because especially in those early days, your product is really the concept of an MVP is really like what is the minimum viable product that actually sells, that people will actually give you money for. It's not just what can you build and what do you think people will use it for. So for you, part of the strategy wasn't to find one enterprise client. It was building a foundation of multiple clients, because you never know, you were coming out of a recession, so you never know what's going to happen. So if you tie yourself too closely to one company and something happens there, things can go away for you. And you mentioned in a pre-interview conversation that I believe you started with actual phones. You started with, and you mentioned on this call, the *55. Tell me about the evolution, because you're very far from where you were then, right?
Very far.
And
yeah.
as CTO, founder, CTO, how did you help steer from, actually dialing in and adding intelligence to those conference calls, and then following the trends through the digital age, through the video age?
Right. So when we started, I think one of the things that was different already when we started was we were a bunch of software guys getting into the old school telecom business. And that itself was a radical change, right? So we looked at the problem differently. We said, okay, why not do all of this through the browser? Why do you need to control things through the phone? And that was the birth of that particular company. And fast forward, again, the early days, we were operating with the T1s, and then we moved into DS3s, and then voice over IP. We kind of went along with the technology along the way, upgrading our way into this. Fast forward now, all of our software, it's all software based. We filed patents. We got our own switching platform patented right along the way. We found some problems along the way with the hardware switches. So again, it was an evolution over time. I mean, it's almost 15 years of building this company. So we took the time we always took the time to build the foundational model because we wanted it to be right. So as we went along this path, we could continue to expand on it. That was our thought process.
And tell me what it was like being in this space through the pandemic. I mean, there was a seismic shift in the world at that moment. What was it like being in that universe? And people were using it, but not nearly at the same scale as they all of a sudden everyone literally at the world was starting to use video conferencing.
It's I say this in a joking way. It's like the 000 moment in a roulette table. everything reset and you don't know what's going to happen next, right? So if you were to go pre-pandemic and a post-pandemic sense, pre-pandemic, I would say a lot of people were still resistant to the idea of getting in front of the camera and communicating and remotely working and getting productive. In a matter of few weeks or months, it all changed. Everybody got pushed into this. Everybody upgraded their internet, and they got better bandwidth. And so what happened is this transformation happened, and it did bring a lot of a tsunami of calls into our system, and our patented switch handled all of that gracefully. But it also brought this scenario where the big players entered, right? Like I think I would say even today, probably Microsoft is the clear winner in this whole game. Zoom was obviously spearheading it, but I think post-pandemic, I think Microsoft jumped in. But it also brought new opportunities. When people got in front of camera and realized, oh, I can do all of this, and they started visualizing things that they did not do before in front of camera. So we started getting these feedback with some of these customers saying, hey, how about this? How about that? How can I create material? How can I collaboratively create content for my brand? So these are some of the thoughts that we carried into the studio bit. Say, hey, this seems like our wheelhouse. We do audio, video, and it's just a different form of consuming it. People are starting to imagine how they can own this now, because I would say at this point, video is commoditized, right? Video is table stakes. How can I make it my own is the new question people are asking.
And so what's next for Vast Communications?
So what's next is essentially, thank God AI exploded 12 months ago. Making my life easier, right? Part of our roadmap is how to bring this content creation. The whole idea is to create once and distribute many forms and create evergreen content, mix and match. And we were thinking about building, our philosophy is everything should be possible through just browser. You don't need a software download. And we did that even with our web meeting product, right? Why do you need to download anything to operate? So we were thinking of building all of these editors and tools, and Gen AI comes along, and now we are able to visualize this in an entirely different way, where we can intercept. Like, for example, in this particular episode, can you have an AI sidekick for entertainment purposes, or avatar that can come in? Or during post-production, can you morph your content into a blog post as soon as you're done with this? Can you just post it into LinkedIn and within 5 minutes transform that? Or create shorts and post? And how can you speed up things that people are normally doing right now? How can you bring that efficiency into the whole mix is our thought process here, and we are marching towards that end goal.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love this idea of this kind of virtual sidekick. I never thought of that before, but yeah, if we are in in this scenario, or we're doing a video interview, and I could just have like a little color person like Marvin Martian or Andy Richter, just a small version of some sidekick who can throw in some good jokes here and there. I don't know why I love that one so much. I haven't heard that, Balaji. That wasn't on my roadmap or even in my vision, but love it. This is terrific.
Absolutely. And imagine, like, one of the biggest things we learned is still the fear of first timer going in front of the camera, right? So we have the practice studio where you can practice with the avatar, which these days you can connect a GPT to anything. So let's say a talking head connected to GPT with a controlled idea that you are going to talk about, right? It can play the role of Balaji you're going to interview tomorrow, and you can practice. It's a practice mirror, but it's real. It's as real as it gets. So things like these are not possible before, now are becoming possible. So I think it's going to propel more people to get in front of camera without this anxiety or stage fear, so to speak.
I'm seeing some sort of alternate reality where I have an agent who's going to interview your agent. So it's just AI agents interviewing other agents on podcasts. So hopefully humans will find it interesting to listen to.
Absolutely. You can have avatar interview you, right? That's another fun variant. And there's so many ways people are visualizing. I think from the LA Connect event, I think what I gathered was that the biggest power that we have in our hands right now is to create these visualizations and see how it looks. And while the big guys are working with hardware and software to make it happen, I think the small guy still has the power of dream that they can visualize with the tools we have in our hands today.
Yeah, he's mentioning the LA Tech Connect conference that took place last week in Los Angeles, headed by the PMA-LA, AI-LA, and LA CTO Forum. And one of the takeaways was that the bar to enter technologies is lowering. And so the technological difficulties or the technological skill and prowess required to build is lessening, but the importance is coming on what to build and how to build it. And where, the big guys out there are the ones who are creating the chips that are available for us to be able to do the things we want to do. A lot of the incumbents are creating the technologies and that allow us to build. At the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of user-generated content. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for us to use these new skills and new tools to build from. And I couldn't agree more, Balaji. I think we're headed towards an unprecedented era of building, of new founders who are going to be able to build and build more sophisticated things than ever before with the less experience necessary to enter the business. So, well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been terrific. Love our first live show. Thank you for Vast Communications and their Studio Bit feature and product for allowing us to do this. Well, our guest has been Balaji Lakshmanan. I'd like to thank our sponsors, PMA-LA and Unida. I'd like to thank you all for listening to us. And if you like what you hear, please smash that subscribe button. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on Founders in LA.